I'm gonna miss you.
After Rob Reiner's passing, the heartbreak didn't wrap at the funeral. It quietly morphed into something ice-cold and way more personal. When the will finally got read, Rory and Jake got completely blindsided. The entire $200 million fortune built over decades of grinding, reputation building, and legacy crafting had been handed off to charitable foundations. In that moment, grief twisted fast. Shock flipped straight into rage. Sources say Jake felt erased from his own family storyline, like the world mattered more than blood. Reports claim he lashed out, saying their parents chose a public legacy over their own children. Lawyers got contacted almost immediately, kicking off a legal war that dragged the Reiner name straight into the spotlight. As the legal process unfolded, more details began leaking out, peeling back the layers of the family's tightly guarded private world. Nearly 2 weeks after the heartbreaking events of December 14, 2025, the family was finally able to hold a quiet farewell, but only after the Los Angeles coroner completed all examinations. By December 19th, official records listed Jake Reiner as the informant on both certificates and the person entrusted with receiving their ashes.
Let's say I had a problem, which I probably did for a while with weed. I was pretty addicted, like 15 to 25 joints a day. I mean, I've been on so many different antidepressant, anti-anxiety meds since I was like 15, 16. I've been suicidal, but never to the point of doing anything or acting on it.
Documents from the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health confirmed Rob and Michelle Reiner were laid to rest through cremation. The service took place at Mount Sinai Mortuary, a respected Jewish funeral home in the Hollywood Hills long associated with some of the industry's most beloved figures. The location carries deep meaning within the Jewish community and follows traditions that emphasize swift, respectful arrangements. Still overwhelmed, Rory and Jake handled everything in silence. No cameras, no crowds, no spectacle. Only a small circle of loved ones stood close in a deeply personal decision. The ashes were brought to Jake's home, keeping their parents near during the darkest days of mourning. Sources say no final resting place has been chosen yet, leaving one last chapter painfully unresolved. Some quietly suggested the ashes might one day be scattered somewhere meaningful or partially placed in a family cemetery. But whatever calm existed didn't last long at all. Just days later, cameras from major outlets caught Rory and Jake stepping into a high-profile Beverly Hills law firm known for handling elite Hollywood inheritance disputes. Both were dressed in dark clothing, sunglasses pulled low, faces drained. They didn't say a single word as photographers shouted questions. Those images spread fast, paired instantly with bold headlines screaming about a $200 million inheritance battle, and speculation went absolutely wild. People couldn't stop asking why lawyers were involved so quickly. There had been no official announcement about asset distribution, no confirmation the will had even been formally opened. Still, Rory stayed silent, eyes heavy and distant, while Jake walked slightly ahead, positioning himself between her and the cameras like a shield. Reporters pressed closer, firing questions about control, trustees, and estate authority. "Has the will been validated yet?" one shouted. Another pushed, asking who would manage the assets during the process. The questions echoed through the hallway, cold and detached, ignoring the reality that these were two people still mourning, not power players chasing money. Then, just when the tension felt unbearable, new information dropped, and it hit hard. A source close to the family revealed that Rob had planned something almost no one saw coming. Nearly his entire estimated $200 million fortune had already been directed toward charitable foundations. At first, the revelation spread quietly, but the shock was massive. According to a longtime family friend, this wasn't about rejection or punishment. It reflected a belief Rob had carried for years. He believed children should stand on their own. To him, too much inherited wealth could dull ambition and steal purpose. That same friend said Rob often spoke about independence, saying Jake, Rory, and Nick needed to build their own paths.
You guys could still be Wesley and Buttercup. Hopefully we'll remember some of this. We'll remember having done this.
But his thinking wasn't one size fits all. With Nick, who had faced personal struggles, Rob believed comfort could do more harm than good. Rob reportedly felt that protecting Nick forever would only delay growth. One close friend explained it bluntly. In Rob's mind, handing large sums to someone still struggling emotionally would be like throwing more wood onto a fire. He believed life itself was the real teacher. Work, effort, consequences. Jake and Rory were different. Rob saw in them the independence he respected most. Jake had a steady career and a life of his own. Rory was deeply involved in her creative work, building something piece by piece. Rob would even joke, "My kids can handle it. They're stronger than people think." For him, success wasn't about what was left behind. It was about whether his children could keep moving forward with purpose when the safety net was gone. That's why long before his passing, Rob made his intentions crystal clear. Nearly all of his estimated $200 million fortune was set aside for charitable foundations. He believed money should keep working for society, not turn into a comfort blanket that weakens the next generation. And he didn't just talk about it, he acted on it. Sources close to the family say Rob personally assigned Rory the task of selling the Brentwood home and other properties, with every dollar flowing straight into the charities he and Michelle had supported for years, including education, healthcare, and social programs. One family friend later recalled a quiet conversation that now feels almost prophetic. Parents aren't here to build a road for their kids. They're here to teach them how to walk on their own. That belief guided Rob until the very end. He knew his children might feel hurt, even betrayed, but he trusted they would eventually understand. Still, that philosophy became painfully complicated once everything unfolded. Regardless of investigations or legal technicalities, none of the children were left a single cent. When that reality sank in, it hit Jake and Rory hard. What followed wasn't just paperwork, it was heartbreak turning into resistance. Behind closed doors at a Beverly Hills law firm, sources say the siblings confronted their legal team in disbelief. Rory, overwhelmed, broke down and reportedly said, "This isn't fair." Jake reacted differently, more raw, more explosive. He allegedly said their parents chose to care for the world but forgot their own children. Those words weren't about greed. They came from deep pain, from feeling erased by the very people who taught them empathy and compassion. They weren't attacking charity itself. They were fighting the feeling that their place in the family story had been quietly removed. Determined to push back, Jake and Rory began exploring every possible legal path. They reviewed timelines, trust structures, and clauses that could be challenged. Soon after, they assembled a heavyweight legal team known for Hollywood inheritance battles. Their first meeting was tense. One attorney reportedly warned them straight up, "If you want fairness, this will be long and it will be brutal." Jake didn't hesitate. "We're not afraid. We've already lost everything," he said. Witnesses later described that moment as a verdict of the heart, not the court. From there, the legal strategy took shape fast. The plan was bold: challenge the charitable foundations directly, arguing they had stripped the biological children of any real connection to their parents' legacy. Behind closed doors, the siblings' intentions became unmistakable. This wasn't about a slice. They wanted everything returned to the family. Rory, quieter but just as firm, reportedly said, "I don't want a portion. I want it all. They're gone and we're left with nothing." Their attorneys warned them clearly. Going after public charities could trigger backlash and permanently damage their parents' public image. Jake didn't back down. "Public opinion isn't my family." That line captured the storm tearing through the Reiner household, a clash between principle and pain. The legal team began gathering everything they could find: private journals, old emails, personal notes, anything that could suggest Rob's final decisions didn't reflect his full emotional state. One attorney reportedly told them straight, "This isn't just about money, it's about redefining what your father's legacy really means." And that's exactly what it became. Not just a courtroom fight, but a collision of grief, love, and resentment. The very values Rob preached, independence, accountability, self-reliance, had become the spark for rebellion. For Jake and Rory, this was no longer about lessons or philosophy. It was about never getting the chance to ask why. Outside the home, the world continued to celebrate Rob Reiner as a symbol of compassion and justice. Inside, the family was quietly breaking apart over the same ideals he lived by. One family friend said softly, he believed they would understand. He just left before hearing they weren't ready. And just like that, the will became more than a legal dispute. It turned into a painful reflection on love, legacy, and loss, proof that even generous intentions can leave wounds no inheritance can fix. For decades, Rob and Michelle were admired as one of Hollywood's most socially driven couples. Their passion shaped their entire lives, from early childhood education to equality and human rights. They didn't just support causes, they built movements. The I Am Your Child Foundation stood as a living monument to that mission, a nonprofit focused on the critical early years of life. It reached millions through educational films like I Am Your Child, The First Years Last Forever, featuring voices such as Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey. The impact was massive. It reshaped how a generation of parents understood early learning and emotional development. Building on that momentum, Rob went further by launching Parents Action for Children, pushing neuroscience and child psychology straight into public policy. One of their most ambitious milestones came with Proposition 10, a campaign Rob led that placed a small tax on tobacco products, funneling funds into First 5 California. The result was billions invested into health, education, and early development for young children across the state. Rob's drive for equality didn't stop there. He co-founded the American Foundation for Equal Rights, which played a historic role in challenging restrictive marriage laws. That fight eventually led to the landmark United States Supreme Court ruling in 2015 that changed marriage rights nationwide. And now that same legacy, built on helping others, sits at the center of a family tearing itself apart. While Rob was the public face, Michelle was the strategist, the quiet force behind the scenes coordinating press outreach, mobilizing artists, and making sure every campaign carried real heart. Beyond their own foundations, the couple consistently supported social causes tied to education, mental health, and programs helping people rebuild their lives. Most of that giving stayed out of the spotlight. Rob believed real charity didn't need applause. Even through filmmaking, he blended art with purpose. His movies carry deep messages about humanity and empathy, and he often hosted private charity screenings to raise funds for community programs ranging from child education to civil rights efforts. Michelle, as a producer, was the perfect partner. She fused creativity and compassion into one mission. Few people knew the two also served on multiple advisory boards across California, especially those focused on child welfare and early education. They didn't just lend names, they gave time, energy, and real involvement. They attended long meetings, read reports line by line, debated budgets to make sure every dollar mattered. Rob and Michelle weren't symbolic figures. They were hands-on, invested, and relentless about impact. Over the years, they also hosted high-profile fundraisers supporting national candidates and causes. At one point, Rob even considered running for governor of California, but he walked away. Advocacy and storytelling mattered more than ambition. When national issues surfaced, Rob didn't stay quiet. In 2017, he co-founded an independent committee focused on election-related concerns, with Michelle beside him every step. They also co-produced documentaries like God and Country, examining the intersection of faith and political influence in modern America. Their impact wasn't just measured in donations, it showed up in real change. Millions of children gained better access to early education. Countless couples saw expanded rights. Progressive ideas gained a louder voice in Hollywood. So when word spread that Rob planned to give nearly all his wealth to charity, those close to him weren't surprised. It fit the life he lived. Generosity wasn't about luxury, it was about purpose. That raised another question. How did Rob Reiner build such an enormous fortune in the first place? The answer goes back to a lifetime inside entertainment. His journey began with acting, especially his breakout role on All in the Family, which made him a household name and opened every door that followed. But the real wealth came behind the camera as a director and producer. Rob delivered hit after hit. Films like When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, The American President, and Stand By Me weren't just cultural classics, they were box office machines. During his peak in the late 80s and 90s, Rob reportedly earned directing fees in the tens of millions per film, plus back-end profit shares that kept paying long after theaters emptied. That mix of creativity and business sense transformed him from actor to one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. A major financial turning point came in 1987 when Rob co-founded Castle Rock Entertainment. The company became a powerhouse, producing legendary projects like Seinfeld and The Shawshank Redemption. When Castle Rock was sold and restructured in the early 90s, Rob received a massive payout from his ownership stake. Real estate played a huge role too. In 1991, Rob purchased his Brentwood home from Norman Lear for around $4.75 million. Today, that property is estimated between $10 and $13.5 million. He also owned a beachfront villa in Malibu's exclusive Colony area, bought for roughly $4 million and now valued up to $20 million, often renting for as much as $150,000 per month. Add in multiple luxury properties across Beverly Hills and prime Los Angeles neighborhoods, and the picture becomes clear. Decades of relentless storytelling, smart deals, and long-term thinking built the fortune that would later sit at the center of one of Hollywood's most emotional inheritance battles. Over time, the booming Hollywood property market helped those holdings multiply, locking in Rob's financial security for decades. But real estate wasn't the whole story. His creative legacy kept paying long after the camera stopped rolling. Iconic projects like This Is Spinal Tap and When Harry Met Sally never disappeared. They stayed in constant rotation, airing worldwide, streaming online, and quietly generating royalties year after year. Each payment seemed small on its own, but stacked over decades, they turned into something massive. One of Rob's proudest late-life wins came when he finally resolved the long-running copyright dispute tied to This Is Spinal Tap. That settlement restored creative and financial control to Rob and his co-creators, strengthening his income far beyond the usual Hollywood cycle. Rob handled money carefully. He kept a diversified investment portfolio, balancing stocks and stable assets to protect against industry slowdowns. Those investments weren't flashy, but they kept his wealth steady during periods when he stepped back from directing. What many people underestimate is Michelle's role in all of this. She wasn't just his partner in life, she was his partner in strategy. Michelle co-produced projects, advised on creative choices, and helped guide major financial decisions. Her influence shielded the family from the financial traps that swallow so many Hollywood names. Piece by piece, from All in the Family to Castle Rock Entertainment, blockbuster films, lifelong royalties, and prime real estate in Brentwood and Malibu, Rob built an empire estimated near $200 million. And that's where the irony cuts deepest. The fortune created through imagination, discipline, and decades of work became the source of profound pain. When the will surfaced, it hit like a shockwave. Everything he built over 50 years was directed not to his children, but to causes he believed served the greater good. To the outside world, it looked like generosity at its highest level. To his children, it felt like distance, like being excluded from his final gesture of love. Did Rob believe real care meant teaching independence by leaving nothing material behind? Or was this choice shaped by years of emotional separation that no amount of money could fix? Those questions still linger, unresolved, hanging between compassion and heartbreak.